Tonight you fall asleep in the year 1793. Paris is quieter than it should be. Not peacefully quiet. No. This silence is tense, suspicious. It is the kind of hush that follows a scream. The kind of stillness that comes only when thousands of people are holding their breath. Somewhere nearby, the sharp thud of wood on stone echoes, the rhythmic pounding of a guillotine scaffold being prepared before sunrise. But you are not in a palace. You are not in a salon. You are not even among the well-fed. You are just here. In a crumbling boarding room above a narrow alleyway wedged between two former bakeries turned watch houses, you lie on a pile of burlap stuffed with straw. There are 6 others in the room with you, and none of you speak unless you have to. Words are dangerous now. Opinions are fatal. Even your dreams must stay loyal to the right ideas, or else. Dust from the ceiling drifts down like ash. A rat skitters across the wooden beams. The scent of boiled onions and unwashed bodies clings to the air like wet parchment. Somewhere below, a woman is crying softly, or laughing. It's hard to tell anymore. You close your eyes, not because you are tired, but because the night has no promises, only a question. And so, the curtain rises. Let us begin. You sleep on straw, but not the golden kind spoken of in stories. This straw has been used before, flattened by too many backs, damp with too many nights, and home to the kind of lice that have forgotten how to die. The burlap sack beneath you itches, as if it carries memories in the threads. And it does. The man who slept here before you was taken in the night. They said he was a monarchist, or a hoarder, or both. No one asked questions. Now you sleep in his spot. There is no blanket, only an old wool coat with a missing sleeve that someone left behind when the spring arrests began. It smells like cabbage and coal smoke, and sometimes you press your face into it just to pretend you belong to something. Warmth, perhaps, or the person who last wore it. Anything but this air that bites even in summer. The room is crowded, too small for the number of bodies it holds. A single cracked window tries its best to let in a breath of night, but mostly it just lets in noise. The drunken boots of a sans-culotte stumbling home, the echoing chants of the committees, the lonely clink of chains a few blocks east, where the prison waits. The beams above you creak with the weight of history. Not grand history, not the kind you'll find written down, but the forgotten kind, the kind that smells like mold and silence. You try to ignore the whispers from the woman sleeping to your left. She speaks in her sleep sometimes. Names, pleas, prayers. You've learned not to listen. It is not safe to know anyone's story. Your body aches from yesterday's labor, carrying baskets of bread no one could afford, moving stone rubble that no one asked to have moved. But physical pain is trustworthy. You prefer it to the fear. At least you know where it comes from. You curl into yourself like a question. How long will this last? Will someone knock tonight? Will the name on the list be yours? Sleep does not come gently. It approaches like an interrogator with conditions. First, your limbs must settle despite the twitch of hunger in your belly. Then your breathing must slow, even though every creak on the stair feels like a final drum beat. Only then, maybe, if the night is kind, your mind will slip away. But the night is rarely kind. A foot brushes against yours. You flinch. It is the child who sleeps across from you. 9 years old, maybe 10, but she doesn't speak anymore. She's wrapped in the remnants of a flag someone once waved in joy. Her mother was taken last week. Now she wraps herself in revolution, as if it can still protect her. You don't remember when sleep started to feel like defiance. Each breath is a negotiation with the dark. You wonder if those who live in the big houses, the ones who cut bread with silver, sleep easier now. Probably not. Heads roll no matter what pillows they lie on. At least that's what the papers say. You haven't seen a paper in weeks. The ceiling above you is cracked. You stare at it as if it might speak. Patterns form, not from artistry, but from decay. The wood has rotted into the shape of a skull, or perhaps a rose. It depends on the night. Tonight, it is neither. Tonight it is simply falling apart, like everything else. You hear coughing, wet deep in clothes, consumption, or nerves, or guilt. It doesn't matter anymore. There are no doctors who don't ask questions, and no one dares answer. Outside, the wind carries whispers, names being read aloud, judgments, street cries that sound like sermons. Liberty, someone mutters in their sleep. You don't laugh, but you almost do. It would wake the others. You reach beneath the mat for your only possession, a small button round and ordinary. It once belonged to your brother's coat, or your mother's. You can't remember now. It doesn't matter. It is round and firm and real. You hold it between your fingers like a talisman, and somehow it keeps you human. You think of the people who once lived here, this very room, before the barricades, before the bread lines, before liberty became something you had to prove. Did they dream too? Did they pray for silence like you do now? The walls weep, not metaphorically. The rain has found a way in. The stones are cold to the touch, even in July. Somewhere under your shoulder a bug crawls. You ignore it. Dignity is a luxury now. Sometimes you try to imagine something soft, a feather, a breeze, a hand that doesn't shake, but softness feels foreign now, like a word you once knew but can't pronounce anymore. You try anyway. You imagine a bed, a real one, with sheets, with a smell that isn't mildew or fear. But the fantasy breaks. Always. Reality has teeth. The door creaks. You freeze. No one enters. Just wind. Just shadow. But you stay frozen, because one day it won't be the wind. You pull the coat tighter. The child breathes through her nose now, shallow and fast. You wonder if she's dreaming. You hope it's not of bread. You've stopped dreaming of food. Your dreams are of fire, mostly. Not destructive. Warming. Controlled. A candle that never flickers. A hearth with stone around it. A fire that asks nothing in return. Sleep pulls you under in pieces. First your legs, then your arms, and last your chest, where the fear lives. You try not to take it with you. You close your eyes. The revolution does not. And maybe now, with the button still in your hand, and the weight of history pressing from every corner of this room, maybe now you can finally sleep. You wake to the sound of fabric tearing. Not yours, not today, but someone's tunic across the room has given up. It's split down the back as they turn too quickly in sleep. They mutter something, half curse, half prayer, then lie back down as if nothing happened. You don't comment, you don't help. You've stopped pretending you can fix anything. Your own clothes lie in a limp pile beside you, still damp with yesterday's sweat and the day before's rain. You pull them on piece by piece, each garment a little colder than the last, each one heavier with the weight of days that came before, and none of them really fit. The shirt used to be white, probably. Now it's a confused color, somewhere between dust and dried blood. The collar is torn. The hem is jagged. The sleeves are uneven because you cut one shorter to make a bandage last week. Not for yourself. The trousers are too big, which would be a blessing if they didn't sag so low that you have to wrap a bit of rope around your waist to keep them up. The rope frays more each morning. Someday it will snap and so will you, maybe. You don't have shoes anymore. Not really. What's left are the hollow ghosts of shoes, more whole than leather, barely clinging to their original form. One sole flaps when you walk, like a mouth trying to speak. But you don't laugh. It's too early for that. Your coat is military, but only in the way an abandoned flag is still a flag. It came from a dead man. You didn't kill him. Someone else did. Or the fever did. Either way, it was left draped over a fence post like a forgotten cause. You waited 3 days to be sure no one would come back for it. Then you took it and never looked back. You stitched the holes with thread made from pulled linen fibers. The buttons don't match. One is wood, one is bone, the others are missing entirely. It smells of rain and powder. Some nights it helps you pretend you're someone who matters. There are no mirrors in the room, only puddles. Sometimes you catch your reflection in the water that gathers by the broken shutters. You look like everyone else now, hollow-eyed, jaw tight, shoulders curled like the question marks no one dares ask. You used to have a hat, but it was taken during a scuffle at the bakery. Someone thought you looked too bourgeois. It was patched and filthy, but appearances are dangerous now. A frayed edge can mean the difference between brother and enemy. You wear anonymity like armor. The child in the corner has wrapped herself in strips of curtain again. It's not a good choice. The fabric is thin and stained, but she drapes it like royalty. Maybe she remembers gowns. Maybe she doesn't know any better. You watch her for a moment. The way she folds it around her shoulders like she's seen it done before. She hums, tunelessly, softly. You envy her detachment. The others begin dressing in silence. No one helps each other. No one asks for help. A woman tucks a rag into her bodice like it's silk. A man sharpens a sliver of wood and slides it into his boot. Just in case the day turns sharp. You move slowly, not from fatigue, though there's plenty of that, but from calculation. Too fast, and your coat will tear again. Too fast, and your ribs might catch fire from the inside. Everything about you has grown brittle. The street below starts to murmur. Boots on cobblestones, wheels groaning under weight, vendors opening shutters with curses and yawns. Someone is already shouting about soap, someone else about traitors. You tie a red scrap of fabric around your wrist, just enough to show loyalty, not enough to look performative. Everything must be balanced. Too much color, and they'll say you're overcompensating. Too little, and they'll say you're hiding something. You don't know who they are anymore. That's the worst part. It used to be easy. The enemy had a face. Now it might be your neighbor, or your reflection in the water. You adjust your collar, tuck the tear under your chin. Try to look neither proud nor afraid. Try to look like someone who belongs, like someone who knows the right words if stopped. But your mouth is dry and your memory unreliable. You haven't had a proper conversation in days. Only whispers, only warnings. There's a smear of ash on your sleeve from last night's fire. You leave it. Let them see it. Let them think you burned something useful. Your body remembers what dignity felt like. A crisp cuff, a straight back, shoes that didn't apologize when they touched the ground. Now you hunch without noticing. Now you walk like you're trying not to be seen. You pass a woman in the stairwell. She doesn't look at you. You don't look at her. Her dress is inside out and her hair has been cut jagged, either by grief or the state. Maybe both. She carries a pail of water and nothing else. Down on the street, people wear their politics like wounds, tricolor ribbons, peens shaped like guillotines, slogans carved into wood or skin. You do not carry a slogan, you carry a silence. The baker's boy walks by in a coat too big for him. His feet are bare, but he grins like he's rich. You wonder what he traded to get the coat. You wonder if he regrets it. The wind pulls at your clothes, tries to take them. The thread pulls tighter. You hold your coat closed at the chest with one hand and walk like you know the way. You don't set, but no one does anymore. Sometimes, you think about color, not just the red, white, blue of flags and blood, but the colors you miss, the deep green of moss, the soft blue of morning fog, the faded lavender of spring skirts, the velvet black of candle smoke. Now everything is gray, brown, charcoal, burnt umber and faded crimson, the color of hunger, the color of rain that never dries, the color of dust that clings like memory. Still you wear what you have, because to be naked is to be dead, and to be overdressed is just as dangerous. You fasten your coat one more time. The rope holds, barely. You step into the street, and maybe, just maybe, your clothes will carry you through the day. Or maybe they one set. Either way, you are dressed for the revolution. Rest now, while you can. You wake before the sun. Not because you want to, no one does, but because the world has decided that sleep is a luxury reserved for the loyal, the lucky, or the dead. You, being none of those, rise in darkness. The first sound is always the coughing, deep and rattling. Somewhere near the foot of the bedrolls, someone is losing a piece of their lung to the cold. You count the hacks, as if that might determine how bad the day will be. 4, 5, 7, worse than yesterday. The second sound is the slosh of a bucket. Someone's gone down early to bring up water from the courtyard. You pray it wasn't you. You've already made that trip twice this week, and your wrists still ache from the weight of the tin pail, the chill that climbs up your arms like guilt. You don't stretch anymore. That's how things tear. Joints, fabric, the fragile space between bone and effort. You move carefully, as though the air might crack. The boards beneath you creak in protest, warning the room that you're vertical again. A few bodies stir. No one speaks. You wash your face with your hands. That's the ritual. Water is too rare. Soap is an old joke. You rub your palms together and smear the night away with sweat and dust. You feel no cleaner, but you look less like a ghost. That's something. Your fingers brush the scab on your temple. You leave it. You've learned not to pick at things that want to heal. The woman across from you murmurs a prayer under her breath. You don't know the words, but the rhythm is familiar. Hope straining to reach through a language that no longer fits. She opens her eyes, meets yours and immediately looks away. You nod anyway. Downstairs the door slams. Someone's already left. Brave or foolish, it's hard to tell in the half-light. The sky outside is bruising from black into ash gray. Soon the breadline will start to form. You rise fully, boots dragging across the floor as if unsure they want to follow. You shove your feet in. The soles bite back, but you've stopped flinching. There's no breakfast yet. That comes later, if at all. First there is the ritual of readiness, the small acts of pretending you have control over what happens next. You tie the scrap of red cloth tighter around your wrist. It's fraying at the edges but still visible. Loyalty, on display. You smooth your coat over the places where it bunches. You touch the button in your pocket. Still there, still yours. A boy in the corner lights a candle from a smuggled match. The flame sputters, then steadies. It's too small to warm anything, but it glows just enough to make the air look golden. For a moment you allow yourself to pretend it's beautiful. Then someone sneezes. The illusion breaks. You check your hands. Dirt under the nails. Calluses splitting again. You spit on your fingertips and wipe them against your trousers. Good enough. No one expects clean. Just alive. A man passes behind you with a limp and a belt made of twisted wire. You've never heard him speak. He nods once. You nod back. This is the morning language. Silent transactions of acknowledgement. You're still here. So am I. Let's try again. You step into the hall. It smells like mildew and resignation. The walls are too close together, painted with the greasy shadow of too many bodies brushing past. You shuffle your way down, careful not to make noise. Not because you fear waking anyone, but because noise attracts attention. And attention is the most dangerous currency of all. At the bottom of the stairs, the floor is damp again. Always damp. No source, no rain, just a permanent wetness that seeps from the stones like memory. You cross it quickly, clutching the banister like it might offer forgiveness. Outside the air cuts. Not cold, exactly. More like raw. You suck it in and it scrapes the inside of your throat. The wind smells of old smoke and burned promises. Somewhere far off, the bells of Notre Dame begin to ring. You don't count them. Time is ceremonial now. It doesn't belong to you. The baker's boy is already running past with a sack over his shoulder. He waves. You blink. That's enough greeting. You head toward the well, or what's left of it. A crooked pump that groans when it works and wheezes when it doesn't. You join the short line. No one talks. A woman picks at her fingernails. A man rocks on his heels. A child wraps a string around their wrist over and over again. When your turn comes, you brace your foot and press down on the handle with your whole weight. The pump screams, then coughs. A trickle emerges, brownish at first, then clearing. You catch it in your tin cup. You take a sip. Metal, dirt, life. You splash the rest across your face and wipe your eyes. Not because it helps, but because it tells the others I am awake. I am alert. I am someone who notices. The old man who sells firewood eyes you from across the street. He hasn't moved in hours, but he always seems to be watching. You nod. He doesn't nod back. Maybe he never does. You turn back toward your block. The steps feel heavier. Each one carries a different weight. The fear of letters arriving, the memory of shouting 2 nights ago, the creak of the cart that took your neighbor away. But still you walk them. Because the ritual matters. Because the act of stepping into the day is the only thing they haven't yet taken from you. You return to the threshold. The others have started to rise now, groaning and shivering and praying. You slip past them like fog. No one calls your name. Good. You take your place by the wall and wait, for orders, for crumbs, for fate. But mostly, for the next moment. And maybe now, with your coat fastened, your wrist bound in red and your face streaked with water that could be tears. Maybe now the day can begin. Rest for a moment longer if you must. The revolution is always waiting. You hold it as long as you can. Not for modesty. That vanished the moment privacy did. Not for comfort either. There is none. You hold it because each morning is a negotiation. Between shame and necessity. Between waiting too long and not waiting long enough. Eventually, your body insists. You rise from your corner, avoiding the floorboards you know will creak. There's no line. Not yet. But there will be. You want to go before the others do. Before the smells grow too dense, the air too sour, the eyes too used to looking away. The latrine is down the hall and out the back, through the courtyard that hasn't seen a flower in years. It's not a room, not even a stall, just a wooden plank stretched across a pit, with a curtain that pretends to offer modesty and a bucket of lye water that no one uses. You slip your coat on tighter. The morning chill is sharper here, not from temperature but from the wind that knows where to sting. Your shoes catch on the cobbles, half-soled and whispering curses. You shuffle faster. You pass the kitchens, quiet now but not for long, and the doorway where the guards sometimes stand, sometimes sleep. Today it's empty. You don't ask why. The latrine door hangs by a single hinge. You push it gently and it sighs open. The smell is immediate. A thick slap of rot and ammonia, layered over with something older, something like grief. You step inside. The light through the slats is gray and reluctant. It makes the flies shimmer. You avoid looking down. The plank is narrow, and it wobbles when you sit. Beneath you a pit of everything no one wants to name. The revolution eats well and digests poorly. You close your eyes. This is your moment of meditation. Not holy, not sacred, but still, a moment. Your body softens just enough to let go. You do not sigh, because even breath feels vulnerable now. You just release. And try not to think about how close your skin is to the revolution's leftovers. Some days, you hear the sounds of others nearby. Grunts, coughs, whispered curses. Today you are alone. A small gift, solitude, surrounded by the most undignified smells a body can make. And yet, it's a kind of peace. You spot graffiti scratched into the wall beside you. Faint, but determined. A name, or a prayer. You trace the letters with your eyes but not your fingers. Everything here leaves something behind. When you're done, there's no paper. There hasn't been for months. You carry with you a scrap of cloth, once part of a shirt you wore when things were better. You use it, carefully, fold it and fold it again. It has become a ritual object, a personal icon of hygiene and memory. You rinse your hands in the bucket by the door. The water is cold and greasy. The lye bites. It's not clean, but it's cleaner than nothing. That's the rule now, better than nothing. You wipe your palms on your coat, the same coat you'll wear into the crowd, the same coat they'll judge you by. You no longer flinch at the irony. Outside, the day has fully arrived. Smoke is curling from chimneys. Voices rise in cadence, calling for bread, for work, for justice, for mercy. None of those will be found here. The latrine door closes behind you with a groan, the same sound it's made for 100 mornings. You take a deep breath, regret it, then take another, and you move on. Because the body must, even when the mind lingers. Back through the courtyard, past the wall where someone once drew the face of the king, now scratched out into an unrecognizable smear. Past the broken pump, past the man who always watches, past the door with the rusted bolt that still pretends it can keep anyone safe. You return to your place by the wall. You never speak of it. No one does. To discuss the latrine would be to admit that you are human, that you eat, digest, decay, that your body betrays you every day with its needs and its noise. In a time where people vanish for less, you do not remind the world that you are flesh and blood. But you are, and you know it. Every time you squat above the pit, every time your stomach twists from hunger or fear, every time you wash your hands with water that smells like iron. You are real, and terribly, inescapably alive, which is both blessing and curse. A bird lands on the windowsill as you re-enter the hall. It cocks its head at you, feathers fluffed against the morning breeze. It chirps once, then flies away. You almost envy it. The child near the stairs is awake now, rubbing her eyes with a corner of her dress. She doesn't ask where you've been. She doesn't need to. You sit, back against the wall, knees to your chest. You wait, for food, for orders, for anything. But in your bones something has shifted. The body has done its work. Now the mind can rest. At least, for a little while longer. It comes late. Later than it should, later than your stomach would prefer. But it comes. Not all at once. There's no great bell, no clatter of silver or rising steam from a loaded table. No, breakfast arrives quietly as it always does, carried in pale fingers and wrapped in cloth that's stained with a dozen previous mornings. A boy no older than 12 shuffles down the corridor with a basket clutched to his chest. He doesn't make eye contact. He never does. He stops at each doorway like a priest with bad news, delivering penance instead of hope. He reaches your room, lowers the basket, and leaves without a word. What's left in the basket isn't food. It's an apology. A heel of bread, hard as flint. A chunk of something you tell yourself is cheese. Pale yellow, moist in the corners, and smelling faintly of the cellar it likely came from. And a tin mug. Sometimes beer. Sometimes broth. Today it's water that tastes of rust in yesterday's tin. You donuts complain. Complaints are remembered. You take the bread and tap it against the floor. It echoes. That's never a good sign. You break it in half with effort, using your thumbs like wedges, digging into the crack until it yields. The crust splinters into dust. The inside is dry, almost white, and crumbles like old chalk. Still you chew. Your teeth ache. One of them is loose. You worry it will fall out before the next ration, but you chew anyway. You've learned to press your tongue against the pain, to grind carefully, to swallow quickly. The cheese, if it is cheese, comes next. You sniff it. You shouldn't. It always smells worse than it tastes. A sharp, metallic tang, like something scraped from a wheel left too long in the dark. You eat it in 2 bites. The water follows. Warm, flat, touched with metal. You sip, careful not to empty the mug too quickly. This is all you'll get until midday, and that's assuming the delivery doesn't vanish in a cart accident. Or a rebellion. Around you, the others eat in silence. The girl with the curtain-wrapped dress tears her bread into tiny pieces, rolling each one into a ball before eating it like a ritual. The man with the limp chews with his eyes closed. The old woman in the corner just stares at her crust, unmoving, as though trying to remember how hunger works. Sometimes you trade, a crust for a sip, a crumb for a story, but not today. Today, everyone is too tired to bargain. You finish your meal and hold the tin mug to your lips a moment longer than necessary. The metal is cool. It makes you feel like a person. You remember wine once, real wine, the kind with warmth and weight and color. You wonder if you imagined it. Breakfast is never enough. That's not the point. It's not to nourish, it's to remind that you are dependent, that the day begins with gratitude, or not at all. You lick your thumb, run it along the inside of the tin, catching any residue left behind. Your stomach clenches, expecting more. But there is no more. You press your back to the wall and breathe. The chewing has stopped. The rustle of cloth has resumed. People return to their corners. No one says thank you. There is no one to thank. You look down at the crust still clutched in your fingers, a piece the size of your thumb. You consider saving it for later, hiding it in your coat. But then you remember the rats, and the girl who cried when her last saved crumb was gnawed through in the night. So you finish it. And it finishes you a little. Outside the room you hear someone vomiting, too fast maybe, too spoiled, or maybe not spoiled enough. Someone else mutters about meat, real meat, veal maybe, the kind they used to roast during feast days. No one replies, no one believes. You close your eyes for a moment, not sleep, that's past, just pause. You imagine a table, wooden, long, covered in linen. Candles burning low, plates of stew, bowls of figs, loaves of bread that tear, not crack, and butter, soft, salted, yellow as sunrise. You open your eyes. The tin mug is empty, the floor is cold, the girl has begun to hum again. It's a lullaby maybe, or a hymn. You stand, brushing crumbs from your lap. The ones that cling to you, you leave. They are your decoration now, your sign that you've eaten, your armor. The boy with the basket will be back soon to collect the mugs. If they're not there, he'll be questioned. If you still have yours, you will be too. You place it gently by the door and sit back down. Your stomach is still hollow, your mouth still dry, but your hands are steady. That will have to be enough. The sun outside has climbed just high enough to reach through the cracks in the shutters. A single beam catches a floating mote of dust and paints it gold. You watch it drift, weightless, like something with nowhere to be. And maybe now that the hunger is quieter, and the day has begun, and the world has not yet asked too much of you, maybe now you can rest, just a little. There is no job title, no list of duties, No supervisor with a chart. There is only this: you are told to go, and so you go. They send you out after the morning is worn through its first layer of gray. By then the heat has begun to wake up from the stones, and the air smells less like dew and more like sweat and ash. You don't know who makes the decisions. They arrive as orders, folded and handed off like dirty linen. You take the note. You nod. You don't read it. Today your task is bricks. There's a building near Rue des Lombards, or what's left of it, burned out last week. Some say it was sabotage, some say a careless candle, some say the building itself gave up. Doesn't matter now. What matters is that the rubble is in the way. You walk there in silence with 5 others. Some you know by name, some only by the way they smell in the morning. One of them hums through his teeth, tuneless and low. It vibrates in your ears like a warning. The work begins before you arrive. Your hands are already cracking, your back already remembering the weight. You bend, you lift, you carry. The bricks are still warm, charred at the edges, some fused together by the fire, others crumbling like old cake. You stack them in a cart. The cart has a wheel that whines like a child, loud and piercing, but no one mentions it. You are not building, you are not creating, you are merely relocating ruin. Your shirt sticks to your ribs, your coat lies forgotten in a corner. You roll up your sleeves, what's left of them, and tie your hair back if it's long enough to matter. Dust coats your forearms like flour. You taste it when you breathe. The others grunt. Occasionally someone curses. Once someone laughs, but it sounds wrong, like a bone bending the wrong way. You move bricks. You cut your palm on a jagged edge. The blood isn't red anymore, it's rust-colored, dulled by the soot. You suck the cut, not for pain, but to hide it. Blood is a liability. It draws flies, questions, infection. Someone offers you a strip of cloth. You nod, tie it around your hand. Keep moving. The sun climbs, not fast, not slow, just relentlessly. By midday, your shoulders have forgotten how to be upright. You lean against the cart and pretend it's rest. A woman passes by with a basket on her head. She doesn't look at you. You envy her purpose. A man in uniform, not quite a soldier, not quite a guard, watches from across the street. He has a notebook. He writes nothing, just watches. You keep your eyes on the bricks. One slips from your hand and breaks against the ground. The sound is louder than it should be. Everyone looks. You pick it up and pretend it didn't happen. You think of water. There was a time when it flowed freely from fountains shaped like lions or fish, cold and musical. Now it's a ladle passed from hand to hand, warm from too many mouths. Someone coughs. The brick pile shrinks. The sun burns. Still you move. And then a pause. The man with the notebook leaves. The air shifts. Someone mutters that the cart is full. You look. It is. Enough for now. You brush your hands against your trousers. Dust. Blood. Dust again. You reach for the jug near the wall. It's half empty. You don't ask whose it is. You drink. It tastes like rope and rust. You drink again. Someone lights a cigarette. The smoke is acrid and sweet. It hangs in the air like memory. You turn your head and inhale anyway. The work continues. Now it's mortar. You're given a bucket with a broken handle. Your job is to spread it between the bricks that are being stacked elsewhere, for something you'll never see finished. You dip. You smear. You press. The paste is thick, chalky. It smells like old teeth. Your fingers numb. Your feet blister. Your spine makes small complaints that go unanswered. Someone sings. A real tune this time. Something about liberty. No one joins in. You remember music, faintly. You remember a violin, or maybe a flute. Something gentle, not like this. Hours pass, or maybe only minutes stretched out like dough. Time here does not move in a straight line. It loops, cracks, skips, returns. When the sun begins to drop behind the rooftops, someone calls out, a grunt, a gesture. The day is done. You scrape your hands on the edge of the bucket. The mortar sticks beneath your nails. You will never get it out. You walk back slower than you arrived. The others drift beside you like ghosts in work-stained linen. No one speaks. Your feet find the way without thinking. You pass a bakery. The smell is faint, buried under smoke and soot, but it's there. You close your eyes and breathe in. For a second, You are human again. Back at your lodging, you sit on the floor. No energy to wash, no water to spare. The cut on your palm has stiffened. You leave it. Someone asks what you did today. You say bricks. They nod. They say meat. It wasn't meat. You lie down. The floor greets your back like an old wound. And maybe now, with your body broken in just the right ways, and the dust of the dead clinging to your breath, maybe now you can rest. They don't see you. Not really. You walk the same streets each day, past the same doors, bend beneath the same weight, and still, to most you are nothing more than a moving shadow, a blur of coat and dirt and lowered eyes. The shopkeepers glance past you. The committee men look through you. The wealthy, what few remain, tighten their cloaks as you pass, not out of fear, but distaste, as if poverty might stain. It didn't used to be this way, or maybe it always was, but more politely. Now there is no pretense. You are a body, a laborer, a mouth that might speak the wrong words, a pair of eyes that might look too long. You know your place. You carry it on your back like a mark. This morning, as you pass the fountain, dry, with pigeons nesting where water once danced, a man in a fine waistcoat spat near your feet. Not at you, just near enough to remind you that you are beneath him. You didn't stop. You didn't blink. To stop is to be remembered, and that is dangerous. Children, if they see you, stare. They do not wave. You are a lesson to them, a warning. The adults tug their sleeves and whisper, "Don't end up like that," as if you chose this, as if you walked out into the fire and asked to be covered in ash. The guards, if that sep's what they still are, speak in commands. Move, faster, speak up, shut up. They do not ask questions, they issue instructions. Your name, if they knew it once, has dissolved into you. And you respond, because the alternative is silence, and silence these days can be interpreted as treason. At the bread queue, elbows are sharp and words are sharper. You took two. That one's cracked. I saw you cut. You don't answer. You let the complaints pass over you like weather. To argue is to step out of line, to be visible. Sometimes, they pretend to pity you. A woman at the corner offered you a scrap of cloth once. "For your shoes," she said, with a smile so tight it trembled. You took it, thanked her. Later, you found it had a hole already worn through. A kindness, yes, but a tired one. There are days when someone hands you a crust of bread, a boiled potato, an old coin, always with the same expression, that blend of guilt and superiority, like a child feeding a stray dog. You take what you are given, you nod, you move on. There are no thanks in revolution, only survival. Back at your quarters, it's not much better. The ones you live with don't treat you cruelly, but they don't treat you kindly either. Everyone is trying to keep their piece of the sinking raft afloat. There's no time to ask if someone else is drowning. The child sometimes sits near you. She doesn't speak, but she shares her blanket when the nights turn sharp. That's the closest thing to tenderness you've felt in weeks. The old woman hums when she's frightened. It's always the same tune. You think it might be a lullaby. No one tells her to stop. The man with the limp offered you a corner of his mat once. You declined, but he didn't seem offended. It was more routine than generosity, as if he'd been required to offer but not expected to follow through. Most days you are spoken to only in necessities. Pass me that. It's your turn. Did you see him come back? You nod. You comply. You don't offer more. Sometimes you want to scream, not from cruelty but from absence. You want to hear your name spoken aloud. You want to be looked at and not assessed. You want someone to notice the way your hands shake in the mornings. But that is not this world. In this world, being seen is dangerous, and being loved is a liability. There was a man, Henry, who used to sit beside you near the fire. He spoke about philosophy, about Rousseau and reason. He made jokes about bread and tyranny. One day he didn't come back. The next day, no one said his name. You haven't spoken yours in over a week, and yet there are moments, fleeting, unexpected. A stranger at the well once touched your arm, just for a second. No words, no reason, just contact. You carried that warmth for 3 days. A child once waved to you not because you looked kind, but because she thought you were her uncle. You smiled anyway. She realized her mistake and ran off. but for those few seconds you were someone worth waving to. At night, when the day is over and your skin itches with dried sweat and dried fear, you lie in the dark and wonder if someone, somewhere remembers you differently, before the work, before the dust, before your shoulders learn to curl. You imagine a hand on your shoulder, a real one, not to guide you, not to shove, not to arrest you, just to rest there, a weight that comforts instead of commands. It sets a foolish thought, but you keep it anyway, because how people treat you or fail to cannot always strip away who you are underneath. And maybe now, in the quiet, with no voices calling you by the wrong name, maybe now you can pretend. Pretend that you are seen, that you are held, that tomorrow someone might say your name and mean it. Rest now. It begins with a tickle in the throat. Not yours, not at first. Someone across the room, a cough, then two. You glance up, so does everyone else. Not with sympathy, with calculation. How close are they? How long have they been coughing? Did they share a bucket, a crust, a blanket? The tickle spreads. Hygiene, as it once existed, is gone, washed away like the streets after a heavy rain. Now it is a memory, or worse, a luxury. Soap, once common, now passes hand to hand like contraband. Water is rationed more carefully than bread, and still it's never enough. You try to stay clean, everyone does, in their own way. A wet rag scrubbed under the arms, a handful of ash rubbed into the scalp, a ritualistic dip of hands into the same pail, over and over, until the water is the color of regret. The latrine you visit each morning is its own form of infection. You breathe through your mouth and step carefully, but it clings. The smell, the moisture, the knowledge of what you're walking through. There's no escaping it. You carry it back with you, no matter how hard you try not to. Rashes bloom, skin cracks, gums bleed when you eat. You count your teeth each week, gently pressing your tongue against them in the dark. One is loose, has been for days. You push at it until you taste copper. There's a boy 2 rooms down who hasn't moved in 3 days. They think it's fever, or consumption, or exhaustion, but no one checks. To ask is to be involved. To be involved is to be exposed. One of the women sleeps with a cloth tied around her mouth. She says it's to keep her lungs warm. You think it's to keep the fear out. You do your best. You wash when you can. You use a handful of rain from a broken gutter to clean your face. You shake out your coat when no one's looking. You scrape the dirt from under your nails with a splinter of wood. Still you itch, behind the knees, at the base of the neck, under the arms. You try not to scratch. To scratch is to admit it's winning. You remember what it felt like to be clean, not just washed, truly clean. A hot basin, a bar of soap with sharp lavender edges, a towel warmed by fire. That memory is dangerous. It makes the present unbearable. You saw a man on the street last week with spots on his hands, purple, angry looking. He wore gloves, but the fingers were worn through. People gave him space. Not because they pitied him, because they feared him. Fear is the only currency stronger than bread. You think about wounds, not the fresh kind but the ones that fester, the ones that start small, a blister from a boot, a scratch from a nail, and end in fever, in rot, in silence. You've seen men die from less. There is no doctor here, not one you can afford, not one you can trust. There are remedies passed in whispers. Onion poultices, vinegar compresses, garlic tied to the wrist. None of it helps, but it feels like doing something, and sometimes that's enough. You pull off your boots at night and inspect your feet, red, swollen. You rub them with the edge of your sleeve. They throb in reply. You hope they make it through the week. When someone falls truly ill, they are moved. Not to a bed, not to a place of care, just away, out of sight, into another room, or another house. The door is closed, sometimes locked. The silence that follows is the loudest sound of all. You have known this smell, not just rot but the heavy, sick, sweet perfume of a body burning from the inside. It lingers in the hallway for hours after they're taken. The committee says it is a matter of public health. They say it is for the good of all. You wonder if the fever knows it's serving the Republic. At night, you lie still. You don't move unless you have to. You avoid the warmth of others. You press your arms to your sides. You sleep with your mouth closed. And still, when you wake, your throat is dry, your breath is heavy. You wait for the cough. You listen to the room. Today you are lucky. Your lungs are quiet. You sit up, wipe the crust from your eyes, and run your hands through your hair. A clump comes out. Not large, just enough to remind you that your body is working hard to survive, and not quite winning. You wrap the clump in a scrap of paper and drop it from the window. Better the street keeps your secrets. In the courtyard, someone pours a bucket of water over their head. The splash hits the stones like applause. You hear a gasp, a curse, then laughter, real laughter. You smile, just for a moment. You rub your arms down with vinegar. Someone traded you for a heel of bread. It stings. That means it's working, they said. You're not sure what it's working on. There is no plan, only improvisation, only survival. And yet, you go on. You wash your hands, you clean your nails, you scrub at your scalp with ash and oil and whatever's left of dignity, because to stay clean is to say I am still here. I am still human. Even if they forget. Even if your body breaks. Even if no one holds you when the fever comes. You will hold yourself. And maybe now, after the vinegar sting, the icy water, the rasp of cloth against skin, maybe now for a little while longer you can feel clean. Just enough to face the day. Just enough to sleep again when the time comes. Rest now. You learn quickly that the law is not what it claims to be. It does not live in books anymore. It does not wear robes or speak in reasoned tones. It wears boots now. It rides in carts. It carries paper with names. Sometimes yours. Sometimes someone you know. The law is a man who writes your future on a scrap and pins it to the notice board with a rusty nail. You pass that board every morning. You do not look. To look is to know, and to know is to fear. Justice in this world is a knife balanced on breath. It can shift with a word, a glance, a dream you spoke aloud. Punishment arrives swiftly. Not to correct, but to warn. You've seen it happen. A boy took an extra apple. He was hungry. We all are. He was caught before he swallowed the last bite. The next day he walked through the streets with a sign around his neck. Thief. His ears were notched with a blade. Now they call him Dog Boy. He does not come to market anymore. Another, a woman, middle-aged, too loud, too tired, asked the wrong question in the queue. When will there be enough bread? She said. No one answered her, but someone heard. A cart came the next morning. She left in it. No one asked where to. The guillotine, you've been told, is merciful, quick, clean, revolutionary. It kisses the neck and forgets the name. But it accepts not just the blade you fear. You fear the punishments that stay. Public shaming, the stocks, the cold slap of spit on the face, the burn of rumors, the way neighbors look away too quickly, or not quickly enough, the way people speak your name with just enough hesitation to poison it. Your name becomes a stain before it becomes a charge. You stay quiet. You step aside when the guards pass. You nod at the tricolor banners, even when your stomach knots at the sight of red. Because to show doubt is to show dissent, and dissent is treason now. And treason, well, you saw it once. A man accused of hoarding grain. They paraded him through the district with sacks tied to his back, rotten oats crawling with weevils. He shouted that he was innocent, that it was for his children, that the sacks were planted. No one listened. The mob pelted him with stones, spat at him, screamed, and then he vanished. Perhaps into prison, perhaps into smoke. Either way, he was gone. And the sacks were never opened. You learn that trials are not for the guilty. Trials are for display. They are a stage, a performance. The verdict has already been written in the audience's eyes. And yet punishment is not always delivered by law. Sometimes it sits a neighbor, a nod, a whisper, a name scribbled on a paper and dropped in a box. You've seen men punished not for crimes, but for forgetting a password, a slogan, a face, for speaking in the wrong tone, for remembering the past. Memory is dangerous now. You remember a boy, not Dog Boy, another one, who knew poetry. He could quote Voltaire, speak of Rousseau with reverence. One day he was overheard reciting something in Latin. He was beaten with his own book. Now he sells matches. You avoid paper. You burn letters. You forget birthdays. You don't ask questions, not even simple ones. You once said perhaps in a conversation, and were met with silence so loud it hurt. Now you say yes or no, nothing else. You follow the lines, you echo the slogans, you raise your hand when the chant calls for it. You survive. Even when the law is absurd. You saw a man fined for frowning at a public gathering, another for praying in the wrong direction, another for wearing too much black. You wear gray now, or dust, or whatever's closest to neutral. You keep your head down when they read the lists, you pretend not to hear the names. One night, you hear boots in the hall, they stop, not at your door, not this time, still you do not sleep that night, not truly. You think of the guillotine, you've never seen it up close, but you've heard the crowds, the drums, the dull final sound. You wonder if it hurts. Then you wonder why you stir, wondering. Then you try to forget. You tell yourself, this is temporary, this is necessary, this is what justice looks like when it's angry. But deep down you know, this isn't justice. It's theater. It's a lesson scrawled in blood and fear. And still you go on. You tie your red ribbon. You speak when spoken to. You agree. You nod. You applaud. You survive. Because to resist is to vanish. To question is to bleed. And because the law doesn't set care if you are good. Only that you are obedient. And maybe now, with your words measured, your mouth closed, your heartbeat steady, maybe now, you are safe. Just for today. Rest now. You don't know what day it is anymore. Sunday feels like a memory. Bells no longer ring from the cathedrals. Crosses have been pulled from the spires, replaced with flags and firewood. The saints are gone, or hiding, or waiting. But still you pray. Not out loud. Not like before. Not with incense or hymns or stone floors beneath your knees. Now you pray in glances. In whispers. In muttered rhythms that no longer need a god to hear them. You light a candle, not for worship but for light, and for a moment you imagine the flame is holy, small, flickering, alive, like hope. You breathe near it and it dances. It doesn't need to last. It just needs to be. The churches are closed. The ones that aren't are something else now. Granaries, courts, prisons. A statue of Mary in the old courtier has been decapitated. They say it was revolutionary fervor. You think it was hunger. Someone needed the pedestal for firewood. People still cross themselves, sometimes. But it's different now, less a sign of faith, more a nervous tick, a muscle that remembers. You've seen others draw symbols in the dirt with their boot heels. Stars, fish, circles. You don't ask what they mean, you draw your own. Quietly, behind the latrine, once a week. Just 3 dots, for past, present, and whatever's left. Faith has become a secret language. A shared glance. A crust of bread left on a doorstep. A lullaby in Latin hummed under breath. And superstition. That sip's grown like mold. There's a girl in your building who won't eat anything with salt after sundown. She says it keeps the spirits angry. An old man ties ribbons to his wrist for each day he survives. One frayed knot for each morning he's still breathing. A woman near the bakery spits into her palm before crossing any threshold. You used to think it was madness. Now you call it wisdom. You keep your own rituals. You knock twice on the frame before leaving a room. You kiss the inside of your wrist before sleep. You don't know why. You just do, because you're still here. Once you saw a young boy drop a coin in front of a boarded-up chapel and whisper something. When you asked what he said, he looked up at you with wide, serious eyes and replied, "Just in case." That sets what belief is now. Not certainty, not even comfort, just insurance against despair. The Republic has its own gods now. Liberty, reason, progress. You've seen the new altars, the painted murals of glowing ideals. They feel hollow, too clean, too loud. You remember the quiet of a pew, the cold of stone, the way dust danced in the light above the altar. You never believed completely, but now you miss the chance to. They held a festival last week, the festival of the Supreme Being. They called it, a new God for a new world. People were required to smile. Banners waved. There was music, and fear. You watched from a distance. The crowd cheered on cue. The children wore white. The statue at the center was a man with open arms but no face. That frightened you most of all. The faceless god, the one that demanded joy but offered nothing. Afterward, a neighbor burned sage in her room, said it keeps the bad eyes away. You don't know what she meant, but the smell reminded you of something warm. You lingered by her door. You dream of old churches sometimes, empty ones, quiet. You walk the aisles alone, touching the pews. There are no candles, no books, no voices, just stone, just silence, just something that feels like waiting. When you wake, you want to go back. You remember prayers, not the words but the rhythm, the way they rolled across your tongue like smooth river stones. You say them now as nonsense, whispered syllables. Invented devotions. It doesn't matter what they mean. It matters that they stir yours. You bless your food even when it's just water and crust. You press your thumb to your brow. You say thank you to the air. You stir not sure to whom. But gratitude is its own kind of faith. Some nights you stare at the stars and wonder if they still belong to anyone. Are they republic stars now, or still heavens? Once, when no one was watching, you knelt, in the courtyard, behind the shadows. You didn't speak, just knelt, just stayed there until your knees ached. It felt foolish. It felt holy. It felt like remembering who you were. No one talks about God anymore, but everyone leaves a space for him, like a missing tooth the tongue can't stop finding. And maybe now, with your fingers laced together in the dark, and the smell of sage still faint on your sleeve, maybe now, you can believe, not in salvation, not in safety, but in the small silent things that keep your soul from unraveling. And maybe, that sip's enough. Rest now. It doesn't arrive with fanfare. There is no clatter of pots, no shout of supper, echoing through the walls, no gathered warmth, or shared table. Dinner is not an event here. It is an occurrence, if it occurs at all. You wait for it without expecting it, like rain in a dry month. The light has begun to fade when the footsteps come, soft, slow, uncertain. The hallway echoes with the hollow rhythm of a tin pail and tired arms. You glance up, but don't rise. No one does. Rising too quickly only proves you're hungry, and hunger is weakness now. The pail stops at the door. It doesn't enter. A young man, perhaps the same who brought breakfast, perhaps not, places it gently on the floor and walks away. You count to 10. You wait for someone else to move first. Then, without speaking, the bodies around you stir, one by one, like a murmured prayer becoming audible. The pail contains something that once might have been stew, bits of turnip maybe, cabbage. The color is gray-brown like the water that pools in the street after a heavy storm. There is no meat. There is no salt. Still, it sets warm. Someone ladles it out, not with ceremony, just routine, a tin cup, a shallow spoonful each. No one argues over portion. It isn't worth the energy. Hunger sharpens many things, but it also dulls the need to pretend. You take yours and retreat to your usual place by the window. There's a crust of bread too, thinner than this morning, harder. You dip it into the stew to soften it. It falls apart. You eat it anyway, chewing slowly, pretending it helps. The stew burns your tongue slightly. You welcome it. Pain means it's hot. Heat means it's real. You drink the broth in 2 careful sips, letting it rest in your mouth before swallowing. There's something floating in it, not vegetable, not recognizable. You don't ask. You don't pause. The girl with the curtain dress sits across from you, legs crossed. She eats with a spoon made from a broken comb. It works. She hums between bites. You wonder if she hears the sound herself anymore. Someone near the door belches. Someone else laughs. Briefly, then silence returns. You hold your cup up to the fading light and look at the streaks inside. Oil, or fat, or shadow. You trace them with your finger. You imagine they tell a story. A proper dinner, in another life, would have meant more than food. It would have meant words, candles, company, clinking of cups, and arguments about things that didn't matter. Now it's a silence shared between strangers, and it still feels like something. The old woman doesn't eat. She holds her bowl in her lap, stares into it as if it might give her a vision. Maybe it does. You wonder how many dinners you've eaten in silence now. How many cups, how many bowls, how many evenings have passed without taste, without fullness, without memory. You cannot recall your last full meal. Sometimes your dreams smell like roast chicken, like butter, like peaches in summer syrup. You wake up chewing air. You finish your portion and lick the rim, not for greed but for ritual. It is what you do. It is how you say, I was here. I tasted. I lived today. The cup goes back in the bucket. Someone else will wash it, or won't. It doesn't matter. You'll use it again either way. You sit for a while longer, stomach warm just enough to stop growling. The others settle too. No one speaks, not because there is nothing to say, but because talking feels like work now, and everyone is too tired. From your corner, you watch the dusk press its face against the window. The light grows blue, then bruised, then black. The street outside empties. The day exhales. Dinner is over. You don't bet feel full, you don't bet expect to, but you feel steadier, anchored, as if your body, hollow as it is, has agreed to carry you a little further. And maybe now, with the last warmth of the stew still resting behind your ribs, and the sounds of the room dimming into nothing, maybe now, you can sleep. Not because you're so ready, but because there is nothing else left to do. Rest now. The dreams come later. Not at first, not when you lie down. In the beginning, there is only the heaviness, your limbs like sacks of wet grain, your breath a stubborn tide that refuses to roll out. The floor is colder than it was yesterday, or maybe your bones are just thinner now. Sleep isn't a gentle thing. It ambushes you, like a thief, like the knock at the door no one wants to hear. You don't drift into it, you collapse. And when it finally takes you, when the world above fades, and the ache in your hands becomes quiet, that's when the dreams begin. They stir strange now, not like before. You don't dream of revolution. You don't dream of guillotines or red banners or triumphant marches down boulevards. No, those belong to the waking world, the banners, the boots, the fear that walks in daylight. Your dreams retreat. You dream of bread. A loaf still warm from the oven, cracking open like a smile. The steam rises. The crust is golden and loud when you break it. You don't eat it in the dream. You just hold it. Let the warmth reach your fingertips. That's enough. You dream of water too. Cold, clear, running through your fingers like laughter. You drink until your throat forgets how to be dry. Sometimes you cry while drinking. Not because you're sad, but because your dream body doesn't understand the kindness. And flight. You dream of that more often now. You stir not a bird. You don't have wings, but you float, above rooftops, over crowds, between chimneys like a thread pulled loose. You watch the city from a place where no one can reach you, and no one can point and say, there, that one steps next. You dream of touch, a hand in your hair, a thumb brushing your cheek, a kiss, maybe, not passionate, just present. Just someone saying, you're here. Just someone who sees you. You never see their face. Sometimes, you dream of the past, but it isn't yours. You dream of velvet drapes and polished boots, of wine poured too carelessly, of music played on instruments you don't recognize. You are always watching from behind a curtain, a guest who wasn't invited, a ghost in silk. Other nights, you dream of animals, a dog at your heels, a cat curled against your stomach, a horse standing in a field, unmoving, with eyes that know your name. You don't know what the dreams mean. You don't try to. Meaning is for another world. Here in sleep, you only ask that the dreams not turn sharp. Because sometimes they do. Sometimes you dream of doors, locked ones, endless hallways where your name is being shouted but you cannot answer. You run but your legs are wet clay. You knock, but your hands are wrapped in bandages. You scream, but your mouth is filled with dust. You wake with your heart hammering, a cold film of sweat on your ribs. You roll over and try again. You dream of the people you've lost. They don't speak. They just sit across from you eating soup or brushing your coat or humming that tune your mother once sang. You try to hold on to the details, the curve of a nose, the way they fold their hands, but they slip away when the light returns. There sets a dream You've had more than once, a long table in an open field, and everyone you've ever known is seated there. They are all full. They are all laughing. And you are walking toward them. Just a few more steps. Just a few. You wake before you arrive. You lie still, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the dream will wait for you again tomorrow. Some say dreams are a rebellion, a way for the mind to remember what the world demands you forget. Others say they are echoes, useless noise. You don't care what they are, you only care that they come. Because during the day you don't hope. Not really, there is no space for that. But in your dreams hope is as natural as hunger. It blooms. A child with whole shoes, a room with clean blankets, a street with trees, a face that smiles when it sees you. You never speak in these dreams, but you listen. And what you hear is this: there is something more than this moment, something beyond brick dust and slogans and ration lines, something soft. You don't know if you still ever reach it, but your dreams do. And maybe now, with the night holding you in its quiet jaws, and your breath finally slow and your limbs too tired to fear, maybe now, the dreams will come again. And maybe this time, the bread will be warm enough to bite. Sleep, now. It changes by the hour. Some mornings, it's hunger, the slow kind, the kind that doesn't howl but whispers, whispering that your body has begun to feed on itself, that your bones are becoming sharp not from growth, but from surrender. Some afternoons it sets a name. Not your name, not always, just one being spoken too loudly or too often, or in the wrong company. Names now are like sparks. Some ignite crowds, others ignite gallows. You flinch every time someone says yours, even in kindness, even in passing, especially then. Some days it sets the wrong look. A glance that lingers too long. Eyes that wander upward when the committee marches by. A raised brow, a furrowed forehead. Your face betrays you in ways your mouth never will, so you keep your expression blank, your gaze soft, your neck bowed. But it isn't said always so obvious. There are quieter deaths, like the fever. It travels silently, jumping from shared tin cups and half-washed hands. A shiver at first, then sweat, then stillness. It comes for the oldest, then the youngest, then the ones who didn't rest long enough, eat well enough, fear hard enough. You've seen it. A man coughing one day, pale the next, gone the third. No ceremony, just absence. His mat folded, his name not spoken again. There's the cold too, not just winter chill, but that deep body-stealing cold that creeps into you when you lie too long on stone. When your coat is too thin, your shoes too ruined, your teeth too loose to close your mouth against the wind. You lost feeling in your fingers last week. It came back, mostly. But it sets not always illness or weather. Sometimes what could kill you walks on two legs and wears a badge. You could be caught in the sweep, the nightly ones where carts roll slow through the streets, collecting those without papers, without reasons, without excuses. You could be taken for knowing someone, for not knowing someone, for resembling someone. You've practiced what to say, where you're going, who sent you, why you're needed. You change the story every few days, just in case. And then there sits luck. Plain, cruel luck. The breadline collapses in panic. A stone falls from a cart. A barrel slips on the ice. You're in the wrong place. Someone falls, someone pulls, someone gets trampled, or blamed, or shot. And then of course there is the guillotine. Clean, they say, fast, merciful. But it's not the blade that haunts you, it's the waiting. You saw them once, the condemned, standing in a cart, arms bound, heads bowed, not weeping, just still, as if they'd already left their bodies behind. The crowd cheered. You didn't. You've always been afraid of silence in the wrong places. But death wears other faces too. There sets despair. The quiet kind, the kind that sits in your chest and tells you this isn't temporary, that you've always been this hungry, that you were born cold, that you deserve it. You've seen it take people. A man who stopped tying his boots. A woman who forgot how to speak. A boy who walked into the Seine and didn't swim. You think of them more than you should. You think of them when your fingers shake, when your body is too tired to stand, when your bowl comes back empty and your stomach makes no complaint. But still, you get up. Because what could kill you hasn't set yet. Because something hasn't broken. Not all the way. Because you have not been erased. Not today. You keep the button in your pocket. You trace its smooth edge. A talisman. a defiance. You eat what you can, you drink what you find, you wrap your coat tighter, you answer questions simply, you listen more than you speak, you sleep when you're allowed. You move through the world like someone who intends to return. And maybe now, as the wind presses against the shutters, and the fire in the hallway flickers and coughs, and the man near the door breathes a little slower than yesterday, maybe now, you can sleep. And not worry, not yet, not tonight. Rest now. There is a kind of grief that has no shape, no tears, no name. It lives in the spaces where possibility once was, not what you've lost, but what was never yours to begin with, not memories, but absences, not events but the ghosts of all the things that might have happened. You carry them in silence. You will never see the ocean. You've heard stories, yes, water so vast it drinks the sky, waves that rise like monuments and fall like breath, salt on the air so thick you can taste it without opening your mouth. But to you the ocean is a rumor, a fairy tale wrapped in wind. Your world ends at the edge of the arrondissement. Beyond that, only other streets, other queues, other brick-colored lives, folded in upon themselves. You will never see snow fall gently on a quiet meadow. Not the kind from books. Not the kind where the world hushes itself and all is made new and clean. Here, when snow comes, it turns brown before it touches the street. It mixes with ash and dog piss and crumbles into slush that eats your shoes. You will never see your own reflection in a clear mirror. There is a shard of glass near the hallway where you sometimes catch your face, blurred, cracked, framed by peeling plaster. You study it in fragments, a cheek, an eye, a mouth you don't recognize. You've forgotten how your face looks when it smiles. Maybe it never did. You will never see a stage, a painting, a garden untouched by need. Once, when you were very young, or maybe it was someone else's memory, you recall flowers arranged for no reason other than beauty, poppies, or violets. They were not to be eaten, not sold, just admired. You remember reaching for one and being told not to touch. Now you touch everything, because there's nothing left to protect. You will never see Vienna or Rome, or the mountains of Spain. You will never walk across a field without a reason, never sit in a chair simply because it is soft, never read a book to the end without checking over your shoulder. There is no library here, only words passed mouth to mouth, like stories carried on a cough. You will never hear music played for the joy of it. You hear drums, yes, when there's an execution. You hear songs, chanted through the streets with fists in the air, but music, real music, has vanished. It's been eaten by slogans. You try to remember a melody sometimes, before sleep. It always slips away. You will never see your mother Sit's hands grow old. You will never see your brother dance at his wedding. You will never see a child born without fear in its lungs. You will never see your name carved into anything permanent. You will never see your words remembered. You will never see tomorrow in the way you once imagined it. This is the quiet violence of the time you live in, not only the lives it ends but the futures it erases. You mourn futures here. Every day. You look out the window at a sky you'll never touch and wonder what else you've already lost without knowing. How many versions of you have already faded? How many paths collapsed before your feet ever reached them? And yet, despite it all, you keep going. Not because you believe, not because you hope, but because there are still things you might see. The curve of someone's shoulder as they sleep beside you. The way lamplight pools in a hallway when no one else is awake. A single loaf of warm bread, unshared. The moon, unbroken, just once. A new button in your pocket. A child's laugh that isn't said afraid. These too are worth waking for. And maybe now, with your eyes still full of things you still never see, and your hands still open for what little might come, maybe now you can sleep. Gently, softly, with nothing ahead but dreams. You will not leave behind a monument. There will be no statue of you in the square, no inscription on stone, no ribbon-cutting ceremony where someone says your name into a crowd, and the crowd repeats it in reverence. No one will plant flowers at your feet. No one will write a hymn. You already know this. And still you wake. Still you work. Still you eat what little there is. Because even without monuments, even without marble or myth, something remains. but it is not always visible. You think, sometimes, about your bones, not morbidly, just practically. When the body is tired, when it has been hungry too long, too cold, too often, it starts to whisper to itself. It says, "This is how I'll be remembered, not by face, not by voice, by femur, by rib, by tooth and dirt." You wonder where your body will fall, not in a grave. There are too many dead for that. Likely a pit, a cart, a back alley where the rain does the work of mourning. Someone will find you, or not. And yet not all remains are made of flesh. You will leave behind your button, still warm from your palm, still pressed into the lining of your coat like a secret seed. Someone will find it. Maybe. A child, a rat, a soldier rifling through the rags of your pocket. They won't know what it meant, but it meant something. You will leave behind footprints, shallow ones perhaps, washed away in a day, but for a moment there will have been pressure, weight, presence, a mark. You will leave behind crumbs, smears of broth on tin, scratches on door frames, a whisper in the hallway. You will leave behind a shape in the straw where you used to sleep. Someone else will lie there. They'll feel the warmth just barely, and they won't know why they feel less alone. You will leave behind breath, the kind that once filled a room, even if quietly, the kind that fogged glass in winter, that warmed your fingers before the work bell, that sighed sometimes when no one else was listening. You will leave behind things you never meant to, words spoken in haste, a coat traded for bread, a kindness not returned, a name you once said too loudly. You will leave behind the girl with the curtain dress, humming herself to sleep. Perhaps she will remember your silence. Perhaps she will wear your coat when the nights grow worse. Perhaps she will forget. You will leave behind 1,000 almost. Almost smiled, almost ran, almost kissed, almost said it, almost lived a different life. And still, despite everything, you leave behind proof that you were here. Even if no one remembers your name, even if history does not write you in the margins, even if the world passes over your place in the dust like a wave that cannot be held, you were here. You stood when your legs wanted to fold. You swallowed bitterness and turned it into breath. You bore witness. You did not vanish quietly, not in spirit, even if the world tried to erase you before you were gone. You leave behind the echo of survival, and maybe now, with nothing left to hold and nothing left to offer, and still something within you refuses to flicker out. Maybe now you can rest, not in glory, not in legend, but in the soft truth that you were real, and real was enough. No one remembers your name. It's not carved anywhere, not even in wood, not etched into stone, not whispered in reverent tones. It does not echo in cathedrals or rise from school books. It's gone, but it was spoken once, often perhaps, by someone who handed you bread, or by someone who reached for your hand in the dark, or by the fevered voice of your mother, folding your name into a prayer, one that rose from a damp cradle and dissolved into smoke. Even forgotten it existed. Even gone it was once here. The world has not ended. Not yet. But for you, in this narrow room, in this tangle of hunger and silence and shifting floorboards, the day has ended. You have seen enough. You have held your breath in doorways. You have dug your fingers into bread so thin it vanished between bites. You have spoken when required, and swallowed words when silence was safer. You have carried yourself through alleys where shadows judge, past windows that do not open, beneath flags that demand joy but offer none. You have survived in a world that does not remember the difference between justice and spectacle, between punishment and fear, between duty and erasure. And still you were kind. Not always, not loudly, but sometimes. You made room for the child by the fire. You passed the cup before your thirst was quenched. You sat beside someone on the night they wept, and you did not ask why. You only stayed. That is what remains. Not the slogans, not the trials, not the flags, but the quiet acts that no one witnessed. You will not know how your story ends. You will not see the century turn, the monuments fall, the books written by those who never bled in these alleys. You will not know that your suffering is swept under chapters with names like terror and transition and progress. But you were here. You who held your own hunger like a child. You who learned to speak with your eyes because your mouth could not be trusted. You, who buried your hopes in the walls and prayed they might sprout in another century. You, who wore dust like skin and silence like armor. You do not need to be remembered. You only needed to be real, and you were. So now that the wind has softened, and the fire has drawn low, and the footsteps in the hall have passed without stopping, now you can sleep. Not because you are safe, not because you are full, but because there is nothing more to give, and still you gave. And that in this world of blades and breadlines and empty chairs was holy. No wolves at the door, no cold in your bones, only the breath that leaves you gently now. Only the dark that waits not with teeth but with arms. Sleep now. Sleep deep. You survived another day.